How much of a big gamble the Glassworker was? Very big.
Very big.
Very big.
And we still don't know if it has worked. So we're going to find out. And my father gave me amazing advice. Whenever I would go to him, और मैं उदास थोड़ा बैठ के उनसे बात करता था कि ये क्या हो रहा है, मैं ये क्यों कर रहा हूँ. He would say to me, this is what you decided to do. Now go and do it.
If you had to recommend people, would you say go watch the English version as it was originally intended, या कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता?
No, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, because both versions of the film are the definitive version of the movie. And I'm not saying this to sell the movie. I'm just giving facts. I worked on both versions.
Should have said दोनों देखे ना, ताकि दो double tickets. Go and watch both versions. हेलो अस्सलाम वालेकुम. बहुत ख़ास एपिसोड है द पाकिस्तान एक्सपीरियंस की, क्योंकि राइटर, डायरेक्टर, एनिमेटर, वर्चुओसो, म्यूजिशियन, द रेनेसांस मैन हिमसेल्फ इज़ हियर. और इतने कोई टैलेंटेड इंसान हमारे आए हुए हमारे स्टूडियो. मैंने बोला आप आज मेरी कुर्सी पे बैठेंगे. मैंने मूवी देखी एंड देन आई वाज लाइक दिस मैन डिजर्व्स माय सीट. मिस्टर उस्मान रियाज, हाउ यू सर?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
नो थैंक यू सो मच. कैसा लग रहा है 10 साल की मेहनत? Finally, it's out in the cinemas. And
Finally, it's out in Pakistani cinemas. It feels surreal. I don't know. It's been a whirlwind, though. I don't have words to describe it yet.
So, आपकी NSC में भी लगी, film festivals में भी लगी, Japan में भी लगी. Did you break down there, or was it just Karachi, which was like, shit, अब पाकिस्तानी लोग देखेंगे इसको?
I think NSC पे जब premiere हुआ था, I was so focused on just getting through that, because we gave some speeches in the start, and then I had to sit through the film with the audience, and that was the first time the general public was seeing the film. Obviously they were all festival goers and animation enthusiasts and from animation studios, so there was another added layer of pressure. Okay, this is the most animation wise educated audience that will ever see this film. So for them to like it was a huge relief. And then we had the 4 और shows थे, which were all sold out, alhamdulillah. So it went very very well. उसके बाद फिर शंघाई में premiere हुआ. शंघाई में we couldn't personally go because it was neck to neck with NSC. तो शंघाई में हुआ, that also went extremely well. And there was a Guadalajara festival premiere as well. वो भी NSC के वक्त हो रहा था. Everything was overlapping, so we had to go to NSC. But I'll be taking the film to Japan in August, inshallah. So I'm looking forward to that. But the only time I broke down was here.
Why?
I don't know, because it hit me Pakistan में कि ये ख़त्म हो गई है चीज़. And I was thanking God. And I just had a small moment and collected myself and then finished it.
So something that takes 10 years, how do you then let it go? How are you then like, and I've heard you say it a few times, you did the best possible movie you could have in the given circumstances. Yeah. But I'm sure when you look at the movie and you're like, 2 साल और होते तो ये भी हो सकता था, वो भी हो सकता था. How do you take that call कि now this doesn't belong to just me anymore?
नहीं, that's a very good question. मैं फिल्म को अब देख के उसके फ्लॉज को नहीं देखता, because it's done. And I'm good at that aspect कि मतलब अगर मैंने कुछ बना लिया है, that is now off to the side, ख़त्म हो गया, don't need to look at it again. And it's a very good time capsule कि उस साल में जिसमें ख़त्म किया था, यार, in this the 10 years, it's a very good amalgamation of what we were able to achieve in those 10 years. अब जो चीज़ें सीखी हैं, जो चीज़ें बाद में अप्लाई करनी है, वो अगले प्रोजेक्ट में अप्लाई करेंगे. So for me it's done. This is what we were able to achieve in Pakistan for our first hand-drawn animated feature film. It was all independently financed. Everything that went into it, all of the circumstances, etc., led to this product, and that's it. So letting go is easier in that sense, that I've done everything that I can. Now it's not mine anymore.
I know $116,000 लगे थे 6 मिनट में, and you said it's costed 1/3 of a Studio Ghibli film. Should we just do the math कि 6 मिनट में $116,000 लगे तो 100 minutes में into कर लें?
I mean, it won't be accurate because वो Kickstarter की वजह से we had to also lay a lot of groundwork and a lot of infrastructure. And I've said this many, many times. I'm very grateful I got to work with a remarkable team in Pakistan and a remarkable team internationally to bring this whole thing to life. And of course, my partners at the studio, Mariam Paracha, my wife, and Shehzad Riaz, my cousin. Everybody worked extremely, extremely hard. Budget-wise, it would be slightly inaccurate because it's an amalgamation of everything that happened in these 10 years. So I don't know.
Less than $1 million, over $1 million.
Much, much more.
Much more than $1 million.
That's all I can say. But stretched over 10 years.
So, what was it about the story which made you be like, and I'm sure us waqt you probably thought ke 6 saal lag jayenge, and now you're like, we have the groundwork, so next movie will only take 9 years instead of 10.
Yes, that'll be a success for me if it only takes 9
but
years.
But what was it about the story where you were like, and acha pehle isko ek aur step back le lete hain. You're one of the most talented musicians in the country. Aapka Coke Studio pe bhi gaana aa chuka hai. All doors are open. You're at Berkeley. You're like creme de la creme. You're like, acha main to agla Hans Zimmer hounga. TED के स्टेज पर हैं, you're performing with Mr. Reed, everything is set and you're like, okay, scrap that. Complete change of career. इतनी balls कहाँ से आई?
Animation बचपन से ख्वाब था. That's the simple answer. I've loved it more than anything. And music, I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil. I've been playing music since I started piano. I was 4, maybe 5. Guitar I picked up at 16. Animation always felt like the unattainable beloved. जो उर्दू शायरी में जो होती है कि मतलब I just can't.
ये ज़िया साहब का influence है.
Exactly. But when I went to TED and I saw all these amazing people doing remarkable things, then I was like, okay, if they're talking about doing space archaeology. Animation in Pakistan might not be that difficult. Little did I know it would be extremely difficult, but जब मैं वो comparatively देख रहा था, it seemed simpler. So I jumped off the music path and went straight to animation.
But did it feel like यार ये talent जो है, and I know faith's also very important to you, and somehow ये अल्लाह की एक जिम्मेदारी है or something that's been given to you, and where you are, you could essentially be anything that you want in music from that stage onwards. Did you feel the pressure कि यार ये सब अब मैं छोड़कर I'm going to focus on this project for the next 10 years?
No, but I did retrospectively, like 6-7 years into the journey, be like, what could have been with music. But with music, it was never commercial success. मतलब I was doing very niche things to begin
here
with.
now. But again, like once you graduate from Berkeley, you're there. Don't you think matlab,
no, with the things I was doing and with the direction music is going in, music has shifted a lot from compositional work to heavy production work. And I was never interested in the production side. The people who make music with all of these softwares and it's amazing stuff. I just had no understanding of it. I was never really interested in that side, and I just kept exploring what I wanted to explore. And I think that's the most important part for someone like me. Just explore what interests you. That's always what I've done. With music, it was fun. I got to explore a lot of compositional things. Wrote many orchestral pieces just for myself. We recorded one of them, which is Blue Moon Waltz. That was an amazing experience. And with music, it became more of Guitar Olympics. With all the things I was doing with the piece, and how much can that last? That is all I would think. That how long can this last? Like everything that I was doing on the body of the guitar. Once people get over that gimmick, then it becomes about the composition, becomes about what you've written. And in this day and age, what can you really do with that? Is my thinking behind just not abandoning music, because I still co-composed the score for the Glassworker. I think that's where I was happiest, writing the music for the film, because it has some place to go. So I haven't abandoned music at all. I'd love to perform one-off sometimes. That would be a lot of fun. I did on the Tabish Hashmi show. They told me that on the day. So Muru was very kind to lend me his guitar for that shoot. And I played Firefly there. I keep practicing, I keep playing, but it was never scary. Never scary to jump from music to animation, because that was always what I wanted to do.
It's not just the piano and the guitar, right? What all can you play?
I can play the harmonica, I can play a few other instruments, but because it's a little bit
Rusty.
like cheating,
Yeah.
because once you can play a stringed instrument like the guitar, then you can automatically play a ukulele, you can play a bass guitar, you can play mandolin, you can play all of these instruments. The notes and the tunings are different on some of them, of course, but it's pretty much the same thing. And the same thing with piano, because you can play the piano, you can play automatically the organ, you can play all of these synthesizers and instruments with a keyboard. तो जो हारमोनियम है जो ईस्टर्न क्लासिकल म्यूजिक में बजाते हैं, और क्या है, like accordion. Even though accordions have a completely different set of buttons on the other side, you can still play the keyboard side and then put chords on the other one, but it's all from being able to play the piano. My biggest strength, I feel, is writing and composition. Yeah.
You make it sound so easy, like as somebody who's so jealous of you.
No,
Like
no.
all the things that I do, I would give all of them up if I could do music. Like if I had the ability to do music, I'd be like सब और ले लो, मुझे और कुछ ज़िंदगी में नहीं करना है. मैंने गिटार सीखने की कोशिश की, मैंने पियानो सीखने की कोशिश की, हर चीज़ में माशाल्लाह मैं फेल हो गया. But I started with theatre, then I did stand-up comedy, now I do a podcast, and people are like, why are you shifting? And my answer always is, yeah, I just need a medium. For me, these things are mediums. At the end of the day, I want to say something. I want to have a voice. I want to tell the story. Is that how you think about it? Whether it be music, whether it be animation, आपने पहले दो live action shorts भी discuss की, that at the end of the day, it's about the story that you want to tell, and these things are just mediums that are available to you.
Before I say any of this, I have to say you are a remarkable actor.
यही बुलवाना था.
Host. So never ever, please don't be jealous of me. You are so good at what you do anyway. तो
बस ये clip out करके ये endorsement please हमारे Kickstarter में जाएगी.
But it's the truth.
No,
So
thanks.
You're amazing. So with the things that I do, I never felt any pressure, honestly, क्योंकि बचपन से बस चीज़ें बनाने का शौक था. And thankfully, I've gotten to do that. And all of these things that I have done, it just feels like a natural extension of what I'm interested in, which is I love to make things and tell stories. I'm a craftsman, but I'm also a craftsman in the sense that मुझे हाथ से चीज़ें बनाने का शौक है. Instruments भी, I love playing the instruments. But then also there's the cerebral side as well, which is conceptualization, dreaming up all of these things, writing music. I can't play all the instruments in the orchestra, but I can write for them. So that side was always very interesting. So I don't feel like I'm doing anything different, to be honest. I feel like everyone's discovering my interests slowly, but they were always there.
इसमें, now that you've started talking about this, I do want to stay on the journey, but since we've gone down this segue, when I started watching the movie, I was like, oh, I hear Mariam, it's Usman, theek hai, love story. But then after watching, I was like, no, this isn't about Mariam, these are both Usman. Elise is also Usman, and Vincent is also Usman. So what you were talking about, कि एक craftsman hai, this is a glassworker. Then there is this line where Vincent is like, you don't actually create something, you're just playing music. And I'm like, oh, this is a thought or a journey that Usman went through. At some point you were like, oh, I'm just playing music and not creating something with my own hands. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so that's not to insult any people who play classical repertoires.
अब तो हो गया.
नहीं,
they're all dead, Usman. Nobody will cancel you on.
नहीं, मतलब कि it's a juvenile thought that I had when I was younger, that I'm only learning other people's compositions. I'm not making my own. I have to start making my own music. And that was something I thought at 14, 15. But that's how kids think. And that's, if somebody said that to me, I would be heartbroken. So that insult that Vincent says to Elise in the film, that comes from a deep place of, it's not insecurity, it's just feeling like you're not fully exploring or understanding what you're doing. With music, the way classical music works is I grew up with a wonderful teacher who taught me a lot about music and taught me how to read music and write music, but also I learned a lot of classical music, classical piano pieces. So you learn your Mozarts, your Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, Liszt. Liszt तो मैंने अपनी insistence पे बोला था कि मुझे ये सीखना है. It's a piece called La Campanella. I can't play it anymore, but I could play it when I was younger. It became the interpretation of the piece was how you express yourself in it. And that's still how everybody thinks in the classical music world. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people play these compositions so incredibly well. And I love lots of different people's interpretations of, say, Paganini's violin caprices or things like that. For me, it was, I want to write my own music as well, because then my interpretation is the actual interpretation of the piece. That's where the thinking evolved from. I gave a very long and slightly pretentious answer about all of this.
Please continue giving long and pretentious answers.
I hate the pretense. So
so I saw some of your other interviews as well. A lot of it is, क्यों आपने Pakistan? I'm sure you're bored of that question as well. So people who are really into it, who follow this, because I got like 300 questions as well, which I don't even know, which I will get to. So please, lambe answers dein, technical answers dein. People, that is what people tune into our podcast in particular for. So about this imposter, I don't know if it's valid to say imposter syndrome, but this kashmakash that you were going through, कि यार मैंने क्या बनना है, मैंने किस तरह का artist बनना है. Is that the nucleus for the story? Is that how it came? Or was the story came much later and these are feelings that you went back to when you had the story?
The thing about my creative process, if you want to say that, I don't think about it very much. Things just kind of, I can imagine things, and very, very grateful that I can draw and I can play music. So my ideas, as soon as I get them, I can start making musical notes or drawings and sketches of like camera angles and or character designs, the way I'm picturing the character in my head. That's how the Glassworker came together. The story also came together fairly quickly. Now, whether I'm dipping into my subconscious and then writing all of that, that's probably what happened. Because once the basic structure was there, I started writing music and I started drawing the characters. And there's this picture of me sitting at my desk with all of my papers spread out, and I started storyboarding the film just from my imagination. I didn't have anybody who I was working with. I didn't have any concept art to look at apart from my own. It was just me drawing what I could see in my head. And then when other people started getting involved and we started sitting and really analyzing the story, we kept refining it and we kept improving on the structure that was there, refining all the elements. But when I make things, I start. It's like you vomit something out and then you tweak it, you shape it, and you mold it into a piece that is presentable to people. For me, I probably did dip into those feelings subconsciously and incorporated them into the story, because yes, those were things I used to think when I was at that age. I didn't, but those thoughts come and go, and I like moving forward very quickly. I don't like procrastinating with feelings.
Isme, what you were talking about, that people who play classical music are still immensely talented, right?
100%.
So for instance, if somebody plays Hamlet, the actor is just reading Shakespeare's lines, somebody is directing it, but you see 10 performances of Hamlet and you see it being performed differently. It's what the actor puts into Hamlet which makes the play what it is every single time. So over here also, sure, you're making a movie from scratch, but there's a lot of inspiration. Like, let's say maybe if I would to compare it to chords, the chords were invented by Studio Ghibli and the composition is all yours. So it's still, you're standing on the shoulders of giants who've come before you, and you're taking specific inspiration very consciously, right? Yeah,
100%. I am just a amalgamation of all of my influences, and I wear my influences on my sleeve. The things I love, I love them with all my heart, and I just want to make things that can give other people the same feeling that those films or pieces of music gave me. and I enjoy that very, very much.
इसको थोड़ा और expand करें, because I was looking at some comments and I was like, Studio Ghibli का छाप दिया है.
हाँ.
I'm sure you've read
लेकिन
those.
अगर
मतलब ये कितनी stupid बात है करने वाली.
stupid बात है और नहीं है, because people can look at it on a surface level and say it's the same thing, sure, but if you really analyze it and look at the designs, look at the technicalities behind everything, it's completely different. And I would know because I know those films like the back of my hand. I know how they draw their characters. I've done fan art posters of their characters and other things. I understand how it works.
That's like saying कि कोई भी अगर rock music कर रहा है तो उसने चक बेरी को छाप दिया है.
Exactly.
मतलब
Exactly. It's the same. You hit the nail on the head. People will see what they want to see, and they will say what they think they see, and that's fine. People can believe what they want. I've never really cared much anyway कि लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं. Not in a bad way or a good way. I just want to make the things I want to make, and yes, I would like other people to enjoy it with me, and I'd like to keep going on this path, whichever path I'm on, and keep making things.
So there are few intangibles, right, that you want people to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
You want, there are probably the aesthetics of it. Okay? I want it to look beautiful. I want it to evoke a certain emotion, which is not unique to Studio Ghibli. What are some of the tangibles? Like if you were to say this to somebody listening across the world who's like, yeah, we want to make a movie like Studio Ghibli. What does that mean, that this movie is like or in the same world as Studio Ghibli?
So there's something very specific about Studio Ghibli films that I noticed when I was a child, when I started watching these movies. Before I even knew what Studio Ghibli is and who Hayao Miyazaki or Isao Takahata
Kiki's Delivery Service was
Yes.
your in, right? Yeah.
So when I saw those films, and then as I started getting older, started discovering who made them, there's this sense of loneliness and isolation in those films. And it's about the spaces in between. So you have your plot, you have everything that's going on in those movies and that's driving the story, but then also there are these just moments with the characters and that have nothing to do with anything, but just an insight into their mind, insight into who we're watching, whose journey we're watching unfold, that I always loved. And of course the music. The music supports the visuals so well, and our producer Khizr is producer of the film, but Manuel Cristobal is our second producer. He said to me, and I never really thought about what makes a good score till he said that. He said, while I'm watching, I shouldn't be listening to the music. I shouldn't remember the music. I should be so engrossed in what's happening, and the music should just accentuate the feeling. And I thought that's perfect. That is exactly how we're going to score this film. And we were already like in the middle of scoring, but I made a conscious effort to have memorable music, but only after you watch the movie. There is a theme, obviously there are motifs for certain characters that evoke certain things. You have to have those, but everything else is just something to amplify the emotion and hopefully engross the audience member even more.
Is it slightly different in movies where music is a central theme? So for instance, Elise does play the violin, so the violin piece itself, that wouldn't be the score, right? That would be like a standalone piece.
There are two separate parts in film scoring. One is the actual score of the film, that's building on the underlying emotion and accentuating the action on screen, and then there's diegetic music. Diegetic music
exists in the world
that
itself.
is being played on screen. So Elise's compositions that are played in the film, that's part of the diegetic score. That's actually like not like a sound effect, obviously it's still a piece of music, but it's like dialogue that's happening on screen that's essential to what is happening to the character. I'm talking about the music that is there in the character moments, like when someone's angry or when someone's sad or when someone's feeling melancholy. The score shouldn't be at the forefront there. In my opinion, for this film, there's certain moments where the score being in the forefront is amazing, like when in Star Wars Episode 4, when Luke is looking at the setting suns and the binary sunset, John Williams' score plays, that becomes the foundation for the Force theme throughout Star Wars. That's amazing. So obviously it works that way as well. The philosophy behind this film was we'll keep the music accentuating the emotion. Still great technically thought out good classical music, but not at the forefront.
I know you're a huge fan of Disney as well, but sometimes the score in Disney almost tells you how to feel, right? Like it's very obvious to say, which is not in Studio Ghibli, where you hear a lot more of the environment as well. And I was listening to one of the composers for Studio Ghibli, and he said when the American version came, they made me score 30 extra minutes because Disney said ke American audiences ke 2-3 minutes nahi guzar sakte without music. Like you can't have 2-3 minutes without music in a film.
Oh, wow.
So they made me score like 30 more minutes. The original score was 60 minutes. And then this is the movie where वो एक underground होता है, वो ऊपर होते हैं. I forgot which one. But yeah. So this is the world above is beautiful, and then there's a war happening. I forgot which movie it was. So what's your take on sort of Disney, which maybe is geared towards younger adults than like younger people than Studio Ghibli, which the score sort of tells you exactly how to feel without necessarily evoking it?
I think with Disney, I'm a huge Disney fan, and obviously a huge Disney animation fan, and specifically the early works of Walt Disney, and then also the second renaissance that happened with The Little Mermaid, and then Aladdin and Lion King, one of the greatest animated films ever made.
Did you like the new version?
I watched it.
I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Even though Mufasa looks much better.
I think because the characters are so expressive in the original animated one, the 2D animated one, the photoreal one just doesn't have that charm where the characters are emoting with their eyes. But I mean, it's still a technical marvel. It's still amazing. It's different. I look at it as a different kind of movie.
Back to your old answer.
Yeah. I forgot what the
score was. Disney score.
The score. Sorry.
All good.
With the score, Disney films, especially the ones I'm talking about, majority of them were musicals. Number one, so the score had to tell you, and the character's kind of expositionary song that lays everything out. It tells you everything about the character.
It's called the I Want song.
The I Want song, exactly. So when you see those, you're already kind of prepared that the music will play a bigger role than, say, a Studio Ghibli movie in guiding you and guiding your emotions. So from a technical viewpoint, I understand what's happening. Which one do I prefer? It's a mental switch. I know what I'm watching when I watch a Disney animated film, and I know what I'm watching when I'm watching a Studio Ghibli film. So those two thought processes don't overlap. So I like that style of storytelling as well, because it's a lot of fun. It's much faster paced. It's like those Broadway musicals, and it's remarkable. And then what you see on screen unfolding with everything happening and all the musical numbers is amazing. When I want the subtle storytelling and more nuanced approach, I go the other way. When I just want to sit there and be told how to feel, I watch that. Both are amazing.
Do you feel that certain animation styles lend themselves to the kind of story that you want to tell? I know you've spoken about the fact that Lord of the Rings what Peter Jackson did was by turning it into a movie, like one intelligent thing that he did was he told it from Frodo's perspective rather than trying to tell the entire world. Game of Thrones में शायद ये इशू हुआ था कि वो फिर world इतना हो गया था कि when they tried putting it all together, it just became a disaster right at the end. The last few seasons phenomenally failed, but one would assume that if anybody was to make a Disney style animated Game of Thrones, it just wouldn't gel. So are there certain animation styles that lend themselves to a certain kind of storytelling?
Definitely. Art direction is so important, and just the kind of animation, like you said, the Disney style, it is a specific style, especially developed through, again, that second Renaissance period. The character designs and everything that were incorporated into it, especially with the influence of animators like Glenn Keane, the Bancroft brothers, who are absolutely amazing and who I got to talk to, which was a dream come true. Great animators like Aaron Blaise, Andreas Deja, like they all have their own specific styles, yes, but it also fits into the aesthetic that is developed for each film. And I'm not talking about the character designs, because the character designs keep changing throughout the movies to suit that project. I'm talking about the style of the way the characters move. There's an emphasis on fluidity in Disney films. The movement and expression of the characters, because they're very, very expressive with their eyes, the way they talk, their movements, all the secondary motions that go on. That's a whole other beast, and that is absolutely phenomenal and amazing, and it lends itself to the kind of stories that those films were telling. With the Eastern style and primarily the Japanese animation aesthetic, it came out of a pragmatic approach where they held on drawings, didn't use as many. Obviously, the Studio Ghibli films are a separate animal entirely, because they have a lot of drawings sometimes and then they don't. But the animation style and the kind of storytelling, you can see the Japanese influence in most of the early, I guess, when anime really started becoming a thing, where the stories were action heavy, yes, the drawings were very economically used, and the pace of storytelling was different compared to a Western story, and there were a lot more character moments. Like I feel like I'm rambling a little, but
no, makes perfect sense to me. Because I'm thinking of those manga comics and anime, which maybe the movement is not as fluid or realistic. That's because they're using less drawings than Disney would have, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But
see, I weren't rambling.
Amazing.
An idiot like me can understand.
You're not an idiot at all.
No, in this field, right? Like I don't understand animation. I'm fascinated by a lot of it. So isme maybe realism is a bad word, because still Disney is this fantastical environment, but at the same time the colors are like ठीक है, मतलब पानी orange नहीं होगा, but the water can be orange in Glassworker, water can be orange in Studio Ghibli, and it just, you don't question that. So is that a certain kind of aesthetic where how beautiful it looks or how it just makes sense in that world is a lot more important than water needs to be blue at all times?
I think, just to circle back to the previous question as well, I think because so much work has been made in these two particular styles of animation, now Disney has even not abandoned, but really not doing 2D hand-drawn animation and has moved on to CG. But you know what to expect because of the previous body of work, and they've inspired so many other people to make the films in that style. Same things happened in a place like Japan, where so much content has come out in the anime world that you know what kind of story you're going to see just by looking at the visuals. So I think, even though these are all man-made rules, we're also used to that idea. So subconsciously, when we see, like, the Glassworker, for example, before you even watch the whole movie, you know by the first 20 shots what kind of story this is going to be and how the storytelling will be paced, because you have that repertoire of things that you've watched. So it's also building on what people are familiar with. And this style of animation, even though I love it more than anything, I think it's amazing, I knew it would fit the kind of story the Glassworker was. So it was also a conscious decision to pick this style for the kind of story we wanted to tell. So if that makes sense.
Usme jo, it lends itself a lot more to suspension of disbelief, right? Like nobody is being like, Alice ke baal laal kyun hai?
Yeah.
Hain to hain, matlab, you don't have to question that.
Yeah, exactly.
So in terms of the colors for every shot, is the focus ke what looks nice? Like for instance, the fire ambers look a certain way and they're walking after the place has been bombed, they're walking and the ambers are on screen and they look beautiful. I'm not sure if that's how fire ambers look like. So how do these decisions come to be?
Majority of the aesthetic of the Glassworker, and I'm not talking about the visual effects or the character designs or anything, just the overall feeling in the film, I'm trying to replicate the way the films I enjoy watching have made me feel, and the impression that I have of what things should be like in my head when I watch something like this. So a lot of it was just gut feel. a lot of it was just trying to replicate that emotion, that what those visuals bring out in me. So whenever I would review things, whether it was from the background department or the animation department, or even when we were compositing the shots, I would review it on the basis of how is this making me feel, and then connecting it with. So what I'm going off of is just a feeling whenever I look at the work, and does this feel right? Because technically, yes, I can sit and I can animate the shots, and I've done a lot of animation on this film, and I've assisted in the art direction. But when I look at something, it's just the feeling that I'm trying to get, and then I move forward. So
there's no rule, right? Because you've also spoken about like the physics of how something happens, but it's a decision for every shot where we want to be, where we want to make sure the physics are what they are, and where we want it to just look a certain way, even if that's not how the physics would have worked.
It's about evoking a feeling. It's about giving the impression of what happens in reality rather than imitating it, because that's important, and a lot of Japanese animators talk about that. There was this scene in when Marnie was there where the animators were having a discussion on how a tomato is actually cut, and what does it feel like versus what does it look like. If they went off of how it looks, then it'll look very plain and boring, where the knife is just slicing through the tomato. But if you go off of how it feels, they went for exaggerating the sensation of when you cut something or a vegetable like that, technically a fruit, but just school mein log kehte rehte the. But when you cut that, the way it kind of gives pressure and then kind of bounces, all of those things, you don't see it if you film it, but you feel it when the knife is going through it. That's what they try to capture in the animation. Now, physics wise, that will never happen, but you know instantly when you look at it, you can feel it in your hands. That is very cool, and that's the cool part about animation.
It's like, as opposed to a picture of sunflowers, if you look at Van Gogh's painting of sunflowers, they probably make you feel like you're watching sunflowers as opposed to a picture of sunflowers. Or the Starry Night. The Starry Night evokes something, even if it doesn't look like. Since you've mentioned food, why is there so much food in Studio Ghibli, and were the gulab jamuns a nod to that?
I just we wanted to capture desi food in the Glassworkers aesthetic, so that just was a natural, of course we have to do this. Why is there so much food in Ghibli movies? I don't know, but I know that whenever it's on screen, I'm hungry.
Yeah, and looks beautiful.
Exactly.
Achha, even when you're building the world, like some of the food is desi, some of the architecture is colonial. I saw the Urdu version, but the British version gives you that World War II feeling, war is evil kind of theme that cuts through the movie. Style is Japanese. तो ये it's same suspension of disbelief कि आप ये question ना करें कि different influences आ रहे हैं, देखें, enjoy करें, feel करें और घर जाएं.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the style lends itself so well to that. And animation is the best form of capturing that, which is the suspension of disbelief. If you have good art direction and if the drawings are compositionally cohesive, both what they look like and what the colors are like, then you will just accept it for what is happening on screen. And that was a lot of fun.
So when you talk about drawing, is it one single drawing or is it in layers? Because if the sky looks a certain way and they're in front, will layers be animate hua hota hai, draw hua hota hai, or is it still a single painting?
So it depends. If it's a static shot where the camera is not moving, then you can get away with a single painting, and then you put your character in front of that, and obviously there are multiple drawings for when the character is moving. But if, say, the framing is tight and it's just a dialogue shot with some secondary motion, you can get away with a single painting. And then if you're doing things like introducing camera movement, you will need to achieve parallax with all of your different layers. It depends on how many layers there are in the shot. I planned all of that out in the storyboarding phase, and then I would plan each layer out, what the action was of the character, the composition of the frame, if the camera was moving. And then we would make everything according to that. So it's a very technical process as well. But if you have the right understanding of the technicalities as to how they can be achieved, then it's much easier. And because I've been studying all of these storyboard books since I knew about them, I had a firm grasp of the technicalities while also learning more as we kept working, because I would go back and revisit some things in terms of what I've seen in other movies. Then I'd go and look at the storyboard book, I'd see how they achieved that, and then kind of piece together, reverse engineer those techniques into my storyboards and how we can achieve a similar effect in Pakistan. And then again, I will emphasize the wonderful team that I got to work with, all of the talented artists who brought these things to life, and especially in all of these moving shots, our VFX artist Amir Rifat, who is also animation director on the project, chief compositor,
whose violin is also being played by Elise.
Yeah, that was a cameo. So I actually planned a lot of cameos for people from the studio.
Just A24 लिखा हुआ होता है
yeah,
movies में.
it's just ways to entertain
Yeah.
myself. So I put a few people in the exhibition. I put a few people in Elise's performance. Jeffrey Wexler, who is the chief of international of Studio Ponok and the English language producer of Studio Ghibli, he played a big part in this film, especially in the early years. So he's attending both Elise's performance and then Vincent's exhibition later. So the cameos like that throughout the film. But because it's drawn, obviously it's difficult to be like, who is this person exactly? But yeah.
So if you were to write animation for dummies, assuming I'm the idiot, right? Because I understand film, I understand what a pan shot is, but when I look at a pan shot in animation, I'm starstruck कि यार ये लोग सोच कैसे रहे हैं, ये बन कैसे रहा है कि आप डॉक पे देख रहे हैं and then the camera pans and you see the planes flying away. How does that come about technically? Is it a bunch of hand-drawn animations like how does that happen?
So there are two separate things that you're asking. You're asking for when the character is moving across a frame, and then there's the camera pan technicalities of what's happening with the background, correct?
It's where you try and achieve a camera pan in animation, right? So it's almost like you're looking at the characters on the dock, but camera pan hota hai aur ships fly ho rahi hoti hain. So you've tricked the audience into thinking a camera has panned.
Oh, okay. So for this specific shot, the camera of the characters standing at the dock, and then the camera panning up, and you see the planes. So think of it like a large painting.
Oh, so
with
it's
multiple
parts.
layers.
And
your camera is just
focused on a certain part.
And your camera is focused on that part with the characters in a, let's say, a square painting. We're here. And then we're going to pan across that painting up there. Now, if you have multiple layers in that camera movement, you have your foreground layer, your midground, background, and then if you have multiple things going on in the background, say you have some mountains, say you have some trees in the foreground, and then your sky at the back with your clouds, all of those will be separate layers that will move at different speeds, whether left or right, or in the z-axis, come forward or backward, to convey that sense of depth, to show every single piece and how far away everything stretches. So you have to think along those lines when you're planning out a shot, and then hopefully achieve everything in a way that fools the eye into thinking there's depth when you're essentially looking at a flat image.
That's what I got fooled. ये 3D लग रहा है ये
Yeah.
pan किस तरह लग रहा है.
Yeah.
So when you're storyboarding, if it's a regular film, people are thinking about camera angles and they have certain restrictions, right? It's a POV shot होगा, ये होगा. You don't have that restrictions. You can put the camera on the floor, on the sky, जहाँ आपकी मर्जी हो. So while storyboarding, what is the criteria for you to decide where to put this fake camera in every single shot? And I'm sure when you're storyboarding, you need to do this, right? Like these are decisions that need to be taken very early on.
When I storyboarded the film, I had to draw each panel in a tremendous amount of detail, also to serve as our animatic, and then also inform each department exactly what will happen on screen. Now, the way the shots are planned is I treat it like any movie. You go through the fundamentals first, just to kind of lay the foundation for it, and then there's the ways to make it interesting. Like how high do you want the camera to be? How low do you want the camera to be? With camera pans, it's different. But I'm always trying to give the impression of reality. So even if the camera is panning, I try to treat it like it's physically there, as opposed to floating on a balloon or something, and make each movement as realistic as possible so that you feel like you're a part of the world.
Dude, like logistical considerations also come कि अगर एक shot है where Vincent's climbing up the stairs, and maybe if it's a spiral case and you had to show it from Vincent's point of view, वो शायद ज़्यादा मुश्किल होता है drawing all of that as opposed to getting a wide shot कि पीछे से he's climbing up, and maybe you need less drawings to do something like that.
So actually the wide shot and the shot of the camera panning would be exactly the same, because you'd still be doing that amount of drawings of a character climbing up the stairs, whether you're close up or far away. Thank you. What would be a way to make it cheaper would be to frame it differently, where the character is walking up the stairs and then going out of the frame, where the character is going up the stairs and then walking out of the frame, and then sound effects can take over a little bit, and then the character is walking out from somewhere. That would be the smarter thing to do if you're trying to save time, and also if you're trying to save money. And then there's the bigger shots that are the more expensive shots, and by expensive I mean just on time and effort. Those shots have to be allocated, and I gave myself a few, like even when I was storyboarding the film, I had to break down every single scene, how many shots I will use in that scene, and what kind of shots they will be, so that we can stick to a schedule to finish the movie. So you have to think about all of those things as well while you're making it. That's the restriction of this sort of animation, and especially making it in Pakistan, where I genuinely had to take a extremely pragmatic approach to how we will achieve this, while also making it seem visually interesting and beautiful to look at in certain parts. So yeah.
So for the storyboard, you hand drew 1700?
1477 shots. So individual shots in the film, and then because I would divide each shot into a few panels, like if a character is moving or if the camera is panning. So the drawings I did for the storyboard are about 2500 individual drawings, but the shots that were originally in the film were almost 1500 shots, which I hand drew the entire process because I wanted that experience. All of my heroes draw their films. I wanted to do the same thing.
And the decision to drop some of Elise's POV, is that logistical? Is that the screenplay decision to make it tighter?
We had a 2-hour version of the movie, and when Manuel Cristobal came on board, he said, we have to streamline this. I loved the 2-hour version. I would have loved to have made that, but then we
15 साल
अभी तक बना रहे होते हम अभी तक बना रहे होते अगर वो 2 घंटे वाला version बनाते. So we went to his collaborator, Jose Manuel Jimenez, brilliant editor who's worked on some of my favorite animated films. Him and I, we decided that we'll go with Vincent's POV completely, and at the end of the day it was the smarter decision because it streamlined the story, which was already a little difficult to follow because you have your multiple timelines going and then 2 characters' perspectives on it. So we streamlined it, we made it only Vincent's perspective, and I think the story flows much better. So when people ask me if there's a director's cut, there's no director's cut, but if you want to see the original storyboard, that will be available at some point, but this version is the definitive version of the film.
इसमें there's also this whole idea that your main leads or your protagonists need to be likable, something that I don't personally agree with. There's a couple of things Vincent does in the movie without giving any spoilers which might make him unlikable. Is that something that you were consciously thinking about, or people might not like him for this, or were you like, no, this is a human being?
Yeah, so that was a conscious decision. I wanted to show his humanity and that people are flawed. Everybody in the film is flawed. Every character is flawed. There's no shining beacon of perfection in the film, and there's no hero, there's no villain. It's just people experiencing life, which sounds very boring the way I'm saying it right now, but the main villain in the film is war. So that, and it's just the people around and their stories and what they go through as the war is coming closer and closer, culminating in the ending of the film. But I wanted it to be honest. I wanted it to feel real, and Vincent's decisions in the film, even I don't agree with them, but the character took us there in the story, and it felt right.
And did you know this from the start? Did you have the entire plot? Did you have the entire story? Or did you have your log line, and then I know you're like, मेरा creative process बहुत strange होता है, but did the entire story come to you?
A lot of beats came to me, and even now the film, the way it is, so there are two versions of the movie. There was the original version of the story that I wrote before Jeffrey Wexler and Moya O'Shea came on board, and then there's the version after. So in both versions, the beats of the story are essentially the same, and a lot of moments in the film are essentially the same. But what happened is there were a lot of things that I was afraid of doing, like the designs of the airships and some war scenes and other things that I didn't incorporate into the script. But Jeff and Moya saw all of my image boards and the things I had drawn, and they said, why aren't we showing these things? And my honest answer in the beginning was, I'm afraid of making something so ambitious in Pakistan, because how are we going to achieve it? They said, no, put it in, we'll figure it out later. And I'm very grateful they said that. It made the story far broader and much more dynamic and visually interesting. But at the end of the day, we were still figuring everything out ourselves. But it worked out. And the way the story came, everything that happened, like I said, while I was conceptualizing it, it came very quickly. And then we just kept refining it and tweaking it and improving it, maybe changing a character here and there. But it came together fairly quickly.
इसमें I think शुरू में ships आती हैं, and then they're scared, and one of the kids like, नहीं ये तो हमारा flag है. I think you're priming the audience to be like, नहीं जब different looking ships आएंगी, so you should just keep an eye out for these Zeppelin looking ships, which are a lot more dangerous and don't look as familiar.
See, that's the thing about visual storytelling that I enjoy. You're priming the audience and preparing them for everything they're about to see. So because I laid the foundation for certain things in the beginning of the film, it didn't feel out of place towards the third act of the film. That's the stuff I really enjoy. I viewed it like a big piece of music, like an orchestral piece, where you introduce your theme, and then you do your variations on it, and then your recapitulation, coming back to the theme, and then developing it even more. All of those things are just so much fun.
Have you seen Hamilton?
I have not seen it.
Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda does that
I've seen lots of clips of
right?
it, and Mariam is obsessed with
I'm
Hamilton.
obsessed with it as well.
I have not seen it yet. I should see it.
Well,
Music Sunny.
Probably my favorite person in the world is Lin-Manuel Miranda. So he uses musical motifs phenomenally well in terms of introducing characters and themes. Isme, one of the things I hate about Pakistani dramas, and I know you don't like it as well, is the amount of exposition. This is something like this that you've primed the audience, right? Once the kid has said, do you feel like Urdu dialogue, I haven't seen the English version yet, I fully intend to, so I'm not sure if it's any different, but do you feel like Urdu as a language lends itself to being more expository, and that sort of...
I don't think Urdu as a language lends itself to being more putting so much exposition in, but I feel that the content that's made using the Urdu language has primed us so much to expect exposition that you just said that language primes itself to be expository. So I think we've just made so much work that has so much exposition in Urdu because people are afraid logon ko samajh mein nahi aayega, that we've kind of tainted its reputation a little bit. I agree with you completely. There's so much exposition in bodies of work that people have made rather than visual explanation. So
yeah, I think
I agree with you.
टमाटर हो तो it won't be like, oh, it's a tomato. हाँ बेटा ये एक टमाटर है, टमाटर हम खाते नहीं, बताओ यार इसको बताने की
even the way you're saying it,
yes.
There's also a sing-song kind of approach in all of our voiceover work. That's something I really wanted to eliminate in the Urdu version of this film, where I said I want natural voices and dramatic performances, but not overacted performances. So that was the reason I also picked a lot of the people that I picked for the film, because I loved their speaking voice, and I knew they would sound amazing. Just the texture and timbre of people's voices against a microphone. So that I tried to do something very, very different with the
इसमें आपका और मेरा एक खानदानी फड्डा भी है. हम लोगों के खानदानी राइवलरी. I've taught in Napa for 2-3 years ना, तो ज़िया साहब और मेरी थोड़ा एक philosophy clash ये था that when I talk about adapting plays, I'm very like, make it your own. Like for instance, even when which was the Romeo and Juliet, which where Leonardo DiCaprio is a gangster.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of adaptations like that, right? Like अगर हम transliteration करें, where shall I compare thee to a summer's day, अब वो उर्दू ऑडियंस जाकर नापा में देख रही है और कोई बोल रहा है क्या मैं तुम्हें मौसम गर्मा के एक दिन की तरह से तशबीह दूं. अब ऑडियंस पे बैठ के सोच रही होगी यार ये कितनी बदसूरत नफरत अंगेज औरत होगी कि इसको समर्स डे से आपको. हमारे लिए तो समर मौत है, बट फॉर ऑडियंस एट स्ट्रैटफोर्ड अपॉन एवन where they get sun like 3 days a year. So at times do you feel like wo looking for the perfect Urdu word sort of took people, at least for me in the audience, at times it took me out of the world where I'm like ye word ab koi nahi use karta. And I feel it was a very conscious decision on your part to be like the Urdu needs to be very, very proper as opposed to how you and I talk.
So I'll give you the reason behind that, which is yes koi wo जो हमने अल्फाज इस्तेमाल किए थे कोई भी नहीं इस्तेमाल करता, but remember even in the English version we chose these specific accents to set the film in a particular era, and we've been so primed again as just consumers of Western entertainment that we know when we hear that sort of a British accent कि किस टाइम पे ये चीज़ हो रही है, just because we were primed to understand period pieces and associate it with the British accent. So with the Urdu version, we chose to have a very specific kind of Urdu, not to mimic the English at all, but to follow the same philosophy that this is a period piece and they will use words that weren't used, and we didn't use them that much. There was only in certain sections. और बुजुर्गी इस्तेमाल करते हैं, बच्चे नहीं. They use pretty much again spoken Urdu, but we tried to do that to give a sense of geography, even if it's a subconscious sense of it. And also just the time period कि ये कहाँ से बोल रहे हैं और ये किस era में ये चीज़ें बोल रहे हैं. That was the reason behind that, and I think in that aspect it worked. But we were also going for, now I am also against Zia Saab's philosophy for this कि it should be a direct literal translation. I believe in things need to be localized. That's what we did. The English and the Urdu are actually very, very different versions of the movie. So when you compare it, certain lines and even in character interactions are completely different because we chose to localize it rather than do a direct translation. So we were never looking for the perfect word that is a literal translation of what is being said in English. It was always to evoke the same feeling.
इसमें geography वाली जो बात है, or maybe I haven't seen it enough times. I've only seen it once. You've seen it like a million times probably at this point. Consistency तो नहीं है सारे accents में. They all sound different. Like they all do not sound like the geographically from the same place, which I was fine with.
What we did was, there's so many people. The town, waterfront town, is like a extremely loose adaptation of Karachi. It's a town by the ocean or the sea in that case. It has a lot of colonial architecture and Eastern architecture, and the most important thing, it has people from all over the place. So we kept now there is some logic to everything, which while we were recording the whole thing, we had it divided up as to who will sound like what. But at the end of the day, I mean, how can you keep track of all of those things? So there was an idea that went in that we tried to execute in it. But again, these are all just technicalities that should not matter when you're watching the movie. And yeah, just thinking up all of these things also, I'm struggling because it was just such a haphazard process to get everything recorded.
It's a lot instinct, like what sounds right to you,
Exactly.
and this is your vision of it. Somebody would have done it differently, that's fine, they can go ahead and make that movie. This is how you wanted it, and this is what the product is out there. इसमें सिर्फ technically, because I was thinking about it, अगर आपने मूवी बनाई है, एनिमेट की है, हैंड ड्रॉन की है, अब ऑब्वियसली उर्दू में आप अगर लेट्स से one word's enough in English to describe something, but Urdu might need 6 words.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that problem? Because you have a specific amount of animation or drawings on screen. How do you tackle that then?
It's difficult. That's why I meant that we're not doing a direct translation. So we would have to really sit and think what is being evoked by that particular line. And okay, let's try to find the Urdu equivalent of it. We can't find that, okay, then let's just go with our gut. And again, remembering the dialogue that was said before or the dialogue that was said after, what would fit in this moment. And then also another technical issue that might pop up is the mouth movement, like you said, is too much for the English or too little for the English to fit the Urdu. Then we'd have to improvise and come up with other things for that. So it was an interesting process.
If you had to recommend people, would you say go watch the English version as it was originally intended, या कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता?
No, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, because both versions of the film are the definitive version of the movie. And I'm not saying this to sell the movie. I'm just giving facts. I worked on both versions.
Should have said दोनों देखे ना, ताकि दो double tickets. Go and watch both versions.
There was some thinking behind releasing both versions like this as well, and it's a juvenile thing, but I liked the way Nintendo, and I like the way Nintendo always releases 2 versions of the Pokemon games. Then we don't have a third equivalent,
which is the sun, the moon,
special edition of it, but like Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. And I remember having both, and the only reason I bought the other one as a kid was that I just wanted to see the difference. There was ultimately no difference, very, very few. Just certain Pokemon that you had to trade between the games, but that curiosity is there, so that's why I wanted to release 2 versions.
It worked, because I spoke to like 10 people after the movie, and all of us were like, we should go watch the English version. You should.
And we're in a country where both of these languages, especially in our strata of society, dono samjhe jaate hain. So you can take advantage of that. You can show people 2 different versions of the movie, and by different I mean that again through the localization, some of the plot points are completely different compared to the English version. The structure is obviously the same for the movie, but it's a different take on it, so it makes it interesting.
Isme the idea that once you've made something, it doesn't belong to you anymore, it belongs to the world. So there were a lot of questions, and I'm going to come to the questions after this. Jin logon ne 400 सवाल पूछे, they'll be like, कब पूछोगे? They're all like, क्या हुआ? And my take always is, you don't need to know kya hua. What do you think kya hua end mein? Whatever you think is equally valid. That's your take?
That's what I'm telling people. And so, like, some people is blowing their minds. It can mean whatever you want it to mean. But like, I'll give the example of this one film that I've talked about many, many times. It's one of my favorite films ever made, and it's The Wind Rises. Kaze Tachinu, Miyazaki's supposedly last film before The Boy and the Heron came out. The way that
before his son turned out to be a failure, he was like, I need to make one more.
No.
He's like, let me show this kid what I care, what the old. It's sort of about that, right? It's about his relationship with his son.
Yeah, according to Hayao Miyazaki and Toshio Suzuki, the producer, Boy and the Heron is very much an autobiographical movie on just Miyazaki himself. So I loved that film. But to get back to The Wind Rises, the way that ending made me feel, where it kind of just cuts off and takes you away to Caproni's kingdom. Agar logon ne nahi dekhi hai, Jiro and Caproni meet in this dreamland, or the kingdom of dreams and madness, where they have conversations about what it means to be an engineer and aeronautical engineer, and how many years an artist is truly active. So we cut to that ending with the kind of remains of the planes scattered around, and Jiro climbs up this hill where Caproni is waiting for him, and he sees his dead wife, Naoko's spirit, just kind of float away, and it tells him to live. But then Jiro and Caproni just kind of walk down the hill, and that's the last shot of the movie. They're just walking down, and you see them kind of vanishing. And I just watched it for the first time, and I was like, what happened? I don't understand, but at the same time, I fully understand exactly what happened. He's moving on, and maybe this is the last time he'll ever meet Caproni in the Kingdom of Dreams. So I knew the feeling that it left me on. And so with this film, I tried to have a similar feeling where, again, without getting into spoilers, you don't understand visually what happened, but with the feeling it evokes, you know what has happened.
Yeah.
He's found peace. Now, whether that's through sinister means or his own internal resolve, that is up to your interpretation, but you know the character is at peace in that ending.
Favorite Ghibli movie / movies? Let's put you under pressure. 1.
The Wind Rises.
Okay. Favorite animation non-Ghibli?
Favorite animation non-Ghibli? Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Thoughts on 3D animation taking over?
I think 3D animation is amazing. I think that 3D animation requires just as much work, and it's just as labor intensive and equally as artistic. It's just something I don't know how to do. I love 2D animation, but 3D is amazing.
I've been following this project ever since it started. It went from Shisha Ghar to Glassworker and also lost its way with a plot with half Desi name and story set in post World War II, it seems. How do I connect with it? Why should I not consider it just another hand drawn? Just another? I mean, it takes 10 years. What is Pakistani about it apart from the artist?
Yeah, that's the Pakistani element of the film, that it was made in Pakistan. I tried to make a product that would also be seen internationally. And again, you have to remember, I was 23 years old when I came up with this harebrained scheme. Would I do a lot of things differently now? Absolutely. But with this story, I knew exactly the kind of world I wanted to build. I knew I wanted to mix a lot of elements in it. I wanted to tease a lot of things in it. So I've achieved exactly that. The next one, if I make one, it's a miracle making one film. So if I get to do another one, that'll be another miracle. I would want to explore a lot of different things.
Was there any particular TED talk that you heard and you were like, shit, I should do this?
Yeah, it was Sarah Parcak talking about her space archaeology kind of program where they use satellites and then crowdsource what potentially could be the next archaeological dig site. I saw that and just the huge network that they were creating, and then just letting regular people access and find things. Saw that and said, okay, this is extremely hard. We can do animation in Pakistan, hand-drawn animation in Pakistan.
Do you feel like कि बहुत बड़ा आपको advantage ये है that you don't like people? So, because like a lot of times things I want to do, I go out and be like, ये तो नहीं हो सकता. And you hear it enough times and it just sort of discourages you. And eventually like, अच्छा ये नहीं हो सकता. So how do you manage to block out apart from not meeting a lot of people?
You're right. I think that people use the word introvert. I mean, I like being on my own. I don't really listen to what everyone else is saying. So I don't really even think about it, to be honest. I don't think, oh, ye nahi ho sakta, kyun nahi ho sakta. If someone is saying it to me, sure, I'll be like, but I think ho sakta hai, and then I'll just figure it out. Yeah, I don't suffer from a lot of insecurity about the thing I want to do. I'm more concerned about how I'll do it rather than whether it can be done or not.
And it's like your impetus, like sometimes where I feel I go wrong, it's like, अच्छा ठीक है मैं तुझे करके दिखाऊंगा. But that's not how you're operating, right? You're like, ये मैंने बनाना है, मैं बना रहा हूँ. It's not like I will show these people.
I, especially in the beginning, used to think like that a lot, because that falls into the I know it can be done, why are you saying it can't be done? Okay, I'll show you it can be done. A lot of things that I've done have been motivated by that, but not to hurt anyone, just to say I'll prove this wrong because I feel it can be done. That's it.
Ask him if he'll make an anime series that will be 12 to 24 episodes. क्यों बेचारे को मारना चाहते हो यार? So when will the film release in Middle East? I hope that the project is a huge success. Best of luck on your future endeavors.
Thank you very much. So some announcements will be coming up over the coming weeks regarding the Middle East and a few other territories. So I'm very excited. I can't say more than that because our sales agent Charades is handling that, and they're absolutely amazing.
Soon is the word.
Updates will be coming soon.
Okay.
Updates
Soon is
will
not
mean
the word.
yeah, soon is not the word, because an update will mean when you can expect it rather than the update being it's coming.
A lot of people are like Netflix पे कब आ रही है, तो सिनेमा रन तो होने दो यार, मतलब eventually inshallah, but
Inshallah.
like relax, wait, खुदा के वास्ते. Ask him about his experience at Berklee College of Music. How did he manage to do the Blue Moon Waltz project being a freshman?
I had Blue Moon Waltz before I went to Berklee, so I already had it ready. And the only thing that happened at Berklee was they asked me, do I have something that I would like to do? And I said, well, I have these orchestral pieces. I think this one will be really good. And then I refined it more. Got help from this brilliant composer as well. And then we just recorded it. And it was great. We did, I think, 4 takes. And it turned out brilliantly.
How someone with good sketching skills can take animation as a career?
Animation and sketching are linked, yes. You have to be able to draw well to be able to animate, and the reason it comes in is what drawing animation or understanding animation is understanding movement and being able to draw shifts in the way clothing moves, the way your muscles look when you land versus when you're standing still, or the kind of poses a body goes into to show momentum. Even the simple act of walking in animation, you have to understand how the weight shifts, all of that. If you can draw those things, and if you have a good visual vocabulary for getting these dynamics down, then you will be able to animate well most of the time, because then you understand the technicalities behind it and you're able to draw each pose in, and then it becomes more of a sculptural thing rather than drawing everything technically. You're kind of sculpting this movement that the character is doing, trying different things, seeing how it flows, and then ultimately when it looks right is when it's done.
So इसमें कहीं ना कहीं तो computer आता है, right? So all these drawings eventually do go into a computer and it comes together. So what, in this 2D animation style, what exactly does the computer do? Does it animate, or does it just bring everything together?
So to explain what happens on the computer, I first need to explain how they used to do it in the past. They would use...
So wasn't that the original?
Paper. Yeah, they draw on paper. They would keyframe out the shots and then put in some in-betweens and then further in-betweens to smoothen the motion. But my point is, they would draw on paper, then they would flip between them. You have your drawings on paper. Then those drawings on paper would be transferred to cell paper. And it's this clear plastic sheet which they call animation cells, and then they would draw the character on top of it following what was done in the animation, and then paint the lower side of it so that the line work isn't affected, paint it underneath, and then put it into a plate that goes into what's called a multi-plane camera. Imagine a rectangle, not a rectangle, a cuboid with a camera at the top pointing down, and then all of these drawers where you can slide in these frames which have your cells in it. Now the multi-plane camera is what was made later on to do all of the things that I was describing before, which is have your parallax layers and show depth in the frame. Before it would be completely flat, but I'm explaining the multi-plane camera because that's how we did it on the computer. You would slide in your background layers, so you put your characters here. If you have something above them, you put the bush in front of them on another clear piece, and then ultimately build this kind of, how would I describe it, this layered
pyramid
Jenga block of one frame of animation, and then your camera would take a picture of that, and then you'd pull the slide out, put your next frame in where the character's moved a little bit. The background, if it's moved a little bit, you tweak that, and then take the next picture. Now all we did on the computer was that exact same process, where you had all of your layers and you'd put in your frames of your character and then render out that entire movement that is all drawn and painted by hand. If some effects work is needed on top, you would put that in, You'd put the particles and other things that you were describing earlier, the embers, and then render out that 3-second piece of animation that will go in the movie. So that's what we did on the computer.
How long does this like 3 seconds of animation take?
It
In
depends
terms of
on
man hours.
It depends on the process. Like every shot is different. But if I'm just drawing, say, a character walking and then laughing, if it's 3 seconds, it would probably be at 12 frames per second or 12 drawings per second. But it depends on what kind of shot we're doing. If we want a smoother motion, then you draw on ones, which is 24. Or then if it's further away and you can get away with more stuttery animation, then you would do 8, which is animation 3s. So it depends. I honestly can't say. You could have like over 50 drawings for 3 second shot sometimes, because the frame rate of each frame also varies in that overall 3 thing. So again, I'm trying to make it a simple explanation.
Roughly the movie is 12 into 60 into 60 into 100.
I would say you can take 12 as the average, and 12 into 60 into 100 probably, yeah.
That's the amount of drawings that you see.
That's individual drawings, yeah.
So the drawing itself is painted, but then digitally bhi to color hota hai na?
No, we do everything by hand digitally. So
Okay.
even the pencil I'm using on the tablet looks like a pencil, but it eliminates the process of it's easier, it's quicker.
Yeah.
You're still drawing, but you don't have to, like, you're not limited by what's happened on paper where, oh no, I've drawn this character, I need them to be in this part of the canvas. In digital, you can just lasso it and move it up and you're done. So it is time effective in that way, but it's still the same process. You're still drawing.
But are you painting by hand also, or is that done digitally?
That's also done by hand digitally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ask him, how did he find such talent in Pakistan, and how could we expand this new industry across Pakistan without quality and losing the main purpose of the produced art? How did you find the team?
So there are 2 things I want to say here. The first thing is, when I started off, I was much more optimistic about what the industry could look like. After seeing how difficult this whole thing was, I'm not saying anything about the industry, I'm just talking about myself. This was so hard. I don't know if many people would want to go through that.
Man, you're meant to inspire other people to make animated movies.
No, I'm saying
they're going to look at you and be like, 10 saal to nahi lagane.
That's what I'm saying. I'm being honest about it. And the act of doing it is the inspirational act. I'm just talking about the experience was so difficult. I wouldn't wish it upon a lot of people. Making it in Pakistan, people make animated films all over the world. Making it in Pakistan was so hard. What I'm hoping is that the industry develops a bit where it won't be as hard later, where access to talent, people will actually have a place to use their talent, not just Mano Animation Studios, but lots of studios. And people have started doing that. They're wonderful independent 2D animation studios. There's Puffball. They're doing an amazing job. And then, of course, all of the wonderful CG houses that we have. Talisman Studios, jinhone Donkey King banai. Third World Studios that made the Allah Yaar series. Sharmeen Studio Wadi made the Teen Bahadur series. Things are happening. So I would just like it to develop more. I was very focused on making a cinematic film with a deep story and maybe a lot more thematic content than those films have made. That's the only difference. So for me it was difficult. But now to say how we found the talent, that was also extremely difficult. A lot of people love animation, but when they see how much work it is, thoda sa ghabra jate hain. So there's a lot of talent in Pakistan. A lot of talent. It's just there's so much other things that go into hindering them from exploring it, especially societal pressures. So many talented people have come to the studio that said we can't do this anymore. Then that was upsetting. because of family pressure or other things. जो 2-3 हफ्तों के लिए आते थे and then they would go. But then the people who really loved it, who we were lucky enough to find, where all the stars aligned, that their family was also okay with it. I'm very grateful to everyone. And like I said, I got to work with some of the most talented people I know.
Yeah. So a lot of people were also asking how did you manage the finances? But that's family support, right? Which most people don't have, and it's unfortunate.
Definitely.
But it is what it is.
No, it's the truth. I am extremely aware of the position I was in while making this movie. And मैं रोज अल्लाह का शुक्र अदा करता था that I'm in this position where I can explore this and try to do something for the country, but never forgetting where I'm from. And I feel like people who are in positions like mine, we have a responsibility to acknowledge all of that, but also try things that other people wouldn't be lucky enough to get to, and involve the talented people that we know around us. Like I said, if I can be a place where other talented people, if Mano can be a place where other talented people can come and work, then I owe it to the people here to give them that in my capacity. It's not sustainable.
Do you have a take on this idea कि पाकिस्तान में animators और उनको पैसे कम मिलते हैं और there's a lot of exploitation?
I don't know about the rest of the industry because I've quite frankly not worked with other people. I know that we had a budget for our film. I know that Khizr Mariam and I didn't take any money because we wanted to make sure we paid everyone to the best ability that we could, given the circumstances of the budget we got. I don't know. I can't say.
दुनिया भर में issue है. I remember it's again a phenomenal films, Into the Spider-Verse. Apparently their animators were on strike and complaining the ungodly hours that they made us work on that movie.
Yeah, see, I don't know the circumstances that happened for them. I've been reading about it, so I don't know. All I know is that making this film was very hard, and I don't want to do something like this again for a long time.
Everybody was like, what's next? You're like, nahi.
That's why I said making one film is a miracle. If I get to make another one, I don't even think I'm ready to raise finances, do that whole fight again. So I don't know. All I'm saying is please just enjoy this one, because I don't know if I'll ever make another one.
How do you incorporate themes that appeal to both Desi and foreign audience? That's not hard, right? I mean, love, war, these are pretty universal
keeping
things.
The humanity of the characters, keeping it a little universal, and the slight touches of culture that are in there is interesting both for us and for the Western audiences who are used to this type of medium.
Why didn't he make his movie accessible? Still, it isn't available in the cinema of my city, Sahiwal. यार वो बेचारा नहीं distribute कर रहा है. ये आप नदीम मांडवी वाला कोई है सवाल पीछे. But hopefully soon in Sahiwal.
We're trying to get it in as many screens as we can, because a lot of people have actually been calling their local cinemas, and people are asking us for DCPs and other things to send. So it is happening. I'm doing the best I can to get it everywhere.
He's truly a gem. Please ask his note as a youth, what steps should we take as a nation and individual to bring our youth close to different forms of art, and ask about TED Talk देने. हम अपने youth को किस तरह art की तरफ लेकर आए?
Youth को किस तरफ art की तरफ लाएं? I don't know.
Make good art. आ जाएंगे. With have you seen Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
You build it, they come.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah. That's 11 animations बनाने और सिखाने के लिए कौन सा सॉफ्टवेयर इजी है और अच्छा है? कौन सा सॉफ्टवेयर इजी और अच्छा है?
किस तरह की एनिमेशन बनानी है? I think that's the main question, because अगर फ्लैश एनिमेशन करनी है, then there's a lot of other softwares. अगर ये Glassworker style hand drawn drawing based animation करनी है, then I think the best thing is actually start off on paper. Just take a bunch of papers and understand how animation works. Get a light table. Software की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है. Just start drawing and start exploring things. फिर जब थोड़े से fundamentals समझ में आ जाएंगे, then you'll know how to navigate the interface of the software.
I'm sure up to YouTube should suffice, right? If people just search.
But he's asking what software can they use to make
the thing that you're saying, if somebody is like, मैं paper ले आऊँ, किस तरह animate करना? I'm sure if they go on YouTube and write.
But see, it's more about understanding what you're trying to replicate, because essentially this sort of animation, you're drawing everything, and even the software is built a certain way to replicate like a light table that you're animating on. So, and the layers that you will see, like when you have your, say if you're doing keyframe 1 to keyframe 2 or a breakdown frame up beach mein bana rahe hain, understanding just what is happening there, drawing on paper really helps, and then you appreciate digital more.
His inspiration for the story, did he ever think about giving up? I can't imagine you did not.
There were a lot of times where I did wonder, why am I doing this? Especially towards the 7-year mark. When it hit 7 years and I was like, this is still not going to end. This is so far in. I started having moments where I sat there and was like, what could have been with music? We baat jo hum shuru mein kar rahe the. But I never gave up. I said, you've started on this journey. And my father gave me amazing advice. Whenever I would go to him, और मैं उदास थोड़ा बैठ के उनसे बात करता था कि ये क्या हो रहा है, मैं ये क्यों कर रहा हूँ, he would say to me, this is what you decided to do, now go and do it.
I'm interested in filmmaking, but there is no guideline for it in my city, so how can I make my hobby my career? I need some guidelines. कैसे बने filmmaker ये?
The cool thing about, I'm going to give the standard answer that I've heard all of these amazing cinematographers and directors and documentaries say, and they say that now everybody has access to cameras.
Yeah.
You have it on your phone. Anybody can start telling stories, and you can just understand, and even editing on your phone, you can start making things. So I would say the first step is to just start making things on your own. Then you'll, after you've made a few things, you'll understand how the technicalities and also the aesthetics of the whole thing. Then you've made something worthy of showing other people. Phir aap unko dikhayenge. Then you'll start building up a body of work, and then you can show that body of work to a lot of people who need someone to come in and direct something or film something. So I would say just start doing that.
Half the questions were on animation and half the questions were on your hair.
My hair.
Like how does he keep his hair so fluffy? Why doesn't he age? Taimur Rahman is asking, what shampoo do you use? What hair oil do you use? How is this so beautiful?
I've tried to tone down. What have I? They're so messy all the time. I'm trying to keep them controlled, but they just always become like this.
They're great, yeah. There's like a bit of Prince about them.
Thank you.
What is the inspiration behind making the Glassworker?
The inspiration behind the Glassworker was when I was 16, I saw the Murano glass blowers in Venice. Found that process very interesting. Always wondered why somebody not made a movie about this. And then the next year a movie called Perfume came out, which was like a thriller suspense movie, but about the art of making perfume. Thought that was really interesting. I think that's where I saw the idea that you can have this kind of craftsmanship story with other themes around it. But again, never thought I would do anything with it. And then I kept thinking, as time went by, when will somebody make a movie about this? When it came time to making my own animated film, that's the first idea I pulled out and said, no one's going to do it, I'll make it about glass blowing.
How much of a big gamble the Glassworker was? Very big.
Very big.
Very big.
And we still don't know if it has worked, so we're going to find out.
क्या ये worth it anime fans के लिए जिन्होंने One Piece, Naruto, Jujutsu Kaisen और Attack on Titan जैसी anime देखी है?
I would say just for the idea कि Pakistan में बना है, I think fans of those anime will enjoy it. But if they're watching it just to get the same experience that those anime give them, then absolutely not. They're going to get a very different experience. Those are all action-packed, just very fast-paced, 21-minute shows. They have their movies as well, but those are all action-oriented. This is more in the lines of, I would say, obviously the Studio Ghibli films, obviously Mamoru Hosoda's films, Makoto Shinkai's, those are all my heroes. And
गालियाँ मत दें, गालियाँ. Sorry.
Those are all my heroes. I love their films. So if they enjoyed that, they'll probably enjoy The Glassworker and Dr. Zhivago. That was a big inspiration for this movie.
Are they planning to release this in Japan or USA?
We're going to be taking the film to Japan for the Hiroshima animation season August 14th onwards. And yes, there will be updates on Japan soon.
Ask him what it was like being on the IT crowd and what has he been up to since. Were you in the IT crowd or do you look like somebody?
That when I wear my glasses, yeah, I see it.
How hard is it for you to switch between different instruments? As a novice keyboard and guitar player myself, I find it very hard to switch once I'm playing one for a long time. Any tips?
I initially, when I started guitar, I'd been playing piano for almost 11 years. So it was a different experience. But I think because I'd built up so much familiarity with one instrument, I didn't have trouble switching to the other one and then playing one and then playing the other, the finger exercises, all of that. And I pretty much played the guitar like a piano anyway. So those muscles, even when I was playing the neck, it's the same thing.
What was your experience like covering Sai from Junoon? Did you have any interaction with Salman or Ali before or after the production of your rendition?
Salman Ahmed is my uncle. So
सारे तो आर्ट आपका खानदान में है सारा तो
या वो मेरे अंकल हैं और उनको उन्होंने कहा था कि मुझे सहीओ नहीं करना चाहिए. He insisted that you should play your own version of this. And I said, नहीं मुझे साई करना है. And he's like, please do this. I said, trust me, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with Sai. I love that melody. I had the riff in mind and kind of giving it this almost Moroccan, Middle Eastern kind of sound, especially with the violin line coming in. I said, nobody's going to sing it because nobody can sing like Ali Azmat. There's no point. So I'll get a violin to come in and do the melody. And I'm very, very happy with how it turned out. It turned into this kind of epic, sweeping piece, which I loved.
There's a very there's like a phenomenal performance of Sai in Central Park. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah. I love that performance.
You're saying Salman Ahmed आपके अंकल हैं. ये जो आदमी है ना, ये इसको मैंने कल बताया कि उस्मान रियाज आ रहा है. He said हाँ उसके मामू मलिक रियाज है ना. I was like what? I just messaged Mina. I was like Mina तुमने कभी बताया नहीं तुम्हारे मामू मलिक रियाज है. And he's like हाँ मलिक रियाज उस्मान रियाज. So
नहीं
कहाँ से तुमने कामिल ये झूठा रूमर फैलाया है? कहाँ से तुम्हें पता चला ये मलिक रियाज वाली इंफॉर्मेशन? आई थिंक समबडी ऑनलाइन वाज लाइक यार इसने ये 2D एनिमेशन बनाई है जरूर मलिक रियाज इसका मामू होगा.
कोई रिलेशन
और तो कोई तरीका नहीं है. हाउ वर यू ट्रीटेड बाय द सीनियर म्यूजिशियंस हु आर नॉट एज टैलेंटेड एज यू इन टेक्निक बट हैव मेड अ नेम फॉर देमसेल्व्स? वर दे स्टोक्ड अबाउट यू और जेलस ऑफ योर अकॉम्प्लिशमेंट्स?
व्हिच सीनियर म्यूजिशियंस?
एनी?
नहीं आई डोंट थिंक एनीवन. I don't know. I never thought about that.
I guess maybe like अगर somebody is a commercial success तो वो jealousy आएगी. Technically तो.
But I don't even think I'm a commercial success.
वही ना. That's what I was getting at. That if you had become a commercial success तो jealousy आती है, right?
तो I didn't do anything to. बिल्कुल ठीक है.
Where can we learn to animate? I think ये तो हो गया है. Ask him how inspiration has been taken from Ghibli Studios. Can we have something similar? I think we've covered this. Ask him his opinion on Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. I loved it.
I loved it too. I loved it. No opinion, just बहुत अच्छी फिल्म थी.
Does he agree that the Boy and the Beast, the Beauty and the Beast probably has one of the most underrated scores of all time?
नहीं, he's talking about the Boy and the Beast. वो मामूरो होसदा की एक
My
फिल्म
bad.
है. And I think it has a very underrated score. बहुत अच्छा है.
How can someone work with him remotely? My son is amazingly talented in drawing anime. He's 15 only.
Sweet. Abhi to Mano Animation Studios isn't working on anything, so when we do eventually, and if we do, then I'd love to obviously work with lots of new people.
Should like record a master class on how to do animation.
I'm a very bad teacher. That's one thing I've noticed. Because for me, the only thing I can do is break down my process, and that process doesn't really help a lot of people. I know it's informative.
I think somebody should just put a camera on you doing it. That's the right way to do it. So you don't have to speak to it. आप बस कर ले और मरियम लोगों को समझा दे कि क्या हो रहा है.
No, but like Mariam has actually helped me with this a lot. She said never teach someone with the thinking that they can do what you can do or they're you. They'll approach that. Always try to break it down in a way that they will understand. That actually helped me a lot and informed a lot of things for me later, because I would always tell people, "Main aise karta hu, just do that." And then I understood, no, if I break it down to a fundamental level and then build up backwards from there, then it's easier to understand.
Yeah.
So
it's a good complementary skill set, because she's very good with, like, she has great people energy.
Yeah.
So works out. she can be the voiceover. How to have patience? How did you be like in 10 saal? As like मैं अपनी तरफ रखे. So like I've been thinking about quitting this podcast for the past few months, because मेरा जो अब contradiction है as an artist, if I may call myself that, कि मैं ये रोज़ एक वीडियो बनाता हूँ, रोज़ एक पॉडकास्ट बनाता हूँ, it goes on YouTube, it goes away. Nothing that I am making has any staying power. So, and I can't do that work unless I stop doing this work. So, what would you say to somebody who's going through that? कि how to have the patience to be like, ठीक है, हो सकता है ये अगले साल बाद, हो सकता है ये 10 साल बाद आए, but then this will stay forever as I did something.
See, you don't know if the Glassworker will stay, right? I mean, right now people are enjoying it, but these 10 years could have also been leading up to nothing. So I still don't know what it's going to do, and I wasn't waiting for this journey to end so that I could be like, I've made something that'll last forever. The journey itself, the reason I put up with the journey and tolerated the journey is because I did enjoy it. As difficult as it was, as frustrating as it was, it also had a lot of moments that I wouldn't trade for anything. And I learned so much. And now we've ended up with the film and it's done. But I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know how people are going to receive it. I know a few select people in Pakistan are appreciating it, and hopefully that'll grow, and the international recognition it's gotten is in a few places, not everywhere. So I have to wait and see. I know I worked my hardest on it, and I enjoyed everything that led to this moment. That's why I put up with it. I liked the challenge and I hated the challenge, but the vision kept pulling me. So it depends on, to answer the question, and especially to kind of loop it in with you, you don't know if the work will matter or not. Do you enjoy making it is the most important thing. So if you enjoy making the things that you're dreaming about making, then if you don't get the results, will you be satisfied with it?
So if I quit podcasting, मेरी audience इनको गालियाँ दे, because Usman would have inspired me to be like, because मैं genuinely like, like I've been meaning to make films. My background's in theatre. That's the world I live in. ये मैं I don't know कैसे फंस गया, और अब it just become such a huge thing. And
but you're very good at it.
But that's the problem, right? Like Pakistan experience become an important voice in the ether as well. But मैं कब तक करूँगा? मैं नहीं करना. Like, खैर, that's my issues. How does it feel to be so gifted and yet so recognized in the entire country? ये उस्मान आपने खुद सवाल भेजा है. सवाल है, how does it feel to be so gifted? ये आपने खुद अपनी एक प्रोफाइल.
So when people say these things, I always say you only see what I'm good at. And I'm good at very specific things. And I'm not good at a lot of things. But in my self-curation, obviously you're going to see the things I can do. I'm not going to show you कि मैं ये नहीं कर सकता, मैं वो नहीं कर सकता.
But nobody's being like भिंडी पका के दिखाओ.
True. So I guess
but do you care about not being like recognized?
No.
How does he see the future of anime in a country like Pakistan?
Again, this ties back to what I said earlier, where initially when I started, I was much more optimistic and hopeful. Now I don't know, just because of how difficult it is. I would love for the industry to grow, but time will tell.
What do you think, in your perspective, was the thing that made you this creative? Was it a good teacher, good parenting? What has the most contribution to make you what you are today? Family.
Most important thing is family. Just being around so many creative people since I was born, that must have played a huge part. But I think the other thing that played a huge part is just me being alone and on my own in my room, making things, entertaining myself.
Your dad was also on PTV, no?
My dad was also on PTV.
And your family owns a music company.
My family owns a music company. My father's on PTV. Moyuddin, mere dada mamu hai. Everybody does something. Umar Riaz, my cousin, made a feature-length documentary on Zia Moyuddin. लेकिन उन्होंने टेरेंस मलिक के साथ 2 फिल्मों पे काम किया है. Night of Cups and Song to Song.
Then of course your mamu who's made all those housing societies, right? Like he's also mashallah very talented. If you had to choose between One Piece or Naruto,
Dragon Ball Z.
Ask him why the studio didn't establish their own art style instead of leaned heavily on the Ghibli inspiration.
Again, the Ghibli inspiration is there, but it's also extremely different. The way we draw our characters, the way I drew the nose, the way everything is planned out, it has an aesthetic that is evocative of that. But it's not, you can't copy that unless you're Studio Ghibli. So I mean, I leaned heavily into it. There's a lot of Disney influence as well and other things. And I don't know.
Why didn't he collaborate with existing studios in Pakistan? Which ones? Did you go to any like of these big studios and be like, aap ek animation wing khol le? Geo animation? I don't know.
No, I went to lots of studios here, and a lot of people couldn't support us. I'm not talking about the independent studios. I'm talking about the big ones.
Yeah.
TV stations and other things. Nobody was equipped enough to help. And then the kind of production pipeline that we entered for the Glassworker, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to do that. The smaller ones in Pakistan. So I don't know. It just worked out that way.
पाकिस्तान का सबसे बड़ा फिल्म स्टूडियो तो एंटी वॉर मूवी फंड भी नहीं करेगा. So क्योंकि वही तो है. Why you choose to work in Pakistan rather than other geniuses who choose Hollywood to pursue a better career?
I'm honored that they think I'm part of this genius group.
I think उसने sarcastically बोला है कि ये मुल्क छोड़कर जो चले जाते हैं genius.
I think फिर तो मतलब I assumed कि मुझे genius कह रहे. I wanted to do it in Pakistan because I felt like making this film in Pakistan would begin an industry here. The same thing I've been saying. I being on the other side, I don't know. But initially that was the idea, and utilizing talent and trying to make something special in this country.
Yeah. Ask him about AI and animation. Is AI good or does it diminish the work?
I have a lot of thoughts on AI, and I'm not afraid of it at all. I'm actually very, very intrigued because right now you see what the large language models are capable of, and everybody is experimenting with that, and GPT-4o is here, which is very, very cool. I'm using that a lot. Generative AI, it's able to produce some amazing looking things, the videos, but also the still images. The videos are getting there. We still don't know what it's fully capable of doing yet. Everything that we see is extremely curated, and the best of the best renders picked out to create something cohesive. In terms of animation, I don't know what it's capable of yet. I'm not also sure what it is capable of making on a consistent basis, because it might make one amazing thing and the rest might look very strange. I do see a future where everything is overlapping there. That's inevitable. You can't fight that. It's just going to come. I want the traditional arts to be maintained. I love drawing with my hands. I love making things and interacting with paper, but I also draw digitally now because it's just more efficient. So I don't know. I'm trying to keep an open mind, and I want to see where it goes. But I think I don't have enough information yet to give an informed opinion.
आप इनसे पूछें कि कुरोसाकी अस्कारी साहब ने एक एनिमे बनाने का सोचा हुआ है. अगर वो आपके पास आए आइडिया लेकर, तो आप उससे तावन करेंगे? अगर वो सॉलिड हुआ तो किस हद तक सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं आप?
What? What does that mean? मुझे बिल्कुल भी समझ में नहीं.
A number of my family members are into manga comics, want to pursue careers in either comics. What options are there in Pakistan for pursuing this path?
I think AZ Corp is doing great comic work. Imran Azhar. I think it's amazing. So I would recommend going and working on a project there.
बहुत सारे सवाल थे बट हमने कवर कर लिया है. आई डू वांट टू एंड इट ऑन एंड आई गेट दैट कॉफ़ी ख़त्म हो गई है और हम दोनों थक गए हैं. You spoke about being different in school, and there are a lot of kids who also listen to us, right? Who might feel like the need to fit in or who are like outcasts. And I think you had a great idea on that कि आप स्कूल में तो लोगों को लगता होगा कि यार ये fit in नहीं हो रहा. But it's these people out of school who are like, oh my God, they're so different. What are they doing? They suddenly, what school changes? So I would love for you to talk about that for all the kids listening.
What I was saying was that if you're different in school, it's all about, especially in high school, it's all about fitting in and being a part of something. So if you're ostracized from that, if you're different, you're ostracized from that. So don't let that get to you, is what I was saying to potentially teenagers listening, because then those very things that make you different and not fit in will help you stand out later. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Usman.
Yeah.
Everybody who's watching, go watch The Glassworker. It's out in Karachi, Lahore, Multan, Gujranwala, Islamabad. Am I missing any city? Sahiwal, Sargoda. Please go and watch. And जो लोग बाहर देख रहे हैं, they should follow The Glassworker to see कि उनके मुल्क में कब आएगी, कहाँ आएगी.
Follow my Instagram and Mano Animation Studios, our YouTube, and all the updates will go up there.
Thank you so much, Usman, and thank you for making
pleasure to be here.
Beautiful.
And it's an honor to be here. I watched this show, so thank you.
Thank you. अपने मामू को बोलिए फंड कर दीजिए. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.